service. Welcome to all of you here in person, and just so our people virtually know, we've got a mix of footwear right now. Some people have sandals on, and some people have on boots. I just happened to notice I wanted to give a full report for people who are not with us. And thank you all for joining us. At the fellowship, we recognize all encounters as holy, and we know that our time together is by divine appointment. And we're going to start by singing together our new song, which is at the front of your folder of your songbook, called Prayer of Child of Love. Stand up for our song. That sounded absolutely wonderful.
Didn't it?
Feel free to sit down. And before we do our opening meditation, I want to draw your attention to the packet that was on your chair or down the row from you, along with the bulletin for today's service. You'll find an envelope for your financial gift as well as a connection card. Please fill this out if you're new to us and you're interested in receiving information about the fellowship for today's events and activities, or if your information has changed so we can keep our directory up to date. On the back of the card, please take a moment to list anyone that you would like to remember in prayer during today's service and/or add to our prayer connection list. And just put the card in the basket when it comes around for the collection. We'll have a special time of prayer for those mentioned later in the service. So let's go ahead and start our service with an opening meditation. I invite you to relax where you are, and feel free to close your eyes or soften your gaze. Together, let's take 3 deep Inhale. Exhale. Again. Exhale. Last time. Return to your natural breath rhythm. Scan your body for any areas of tension and just breathe right into those areas. As you do this, release all tension that you're feeling, any stress. Allow yourself to become present. As you become present, know that you are surrounded in love, in comfort, and peace. Considering this, notice how all this moves from your feet planted on Mother Earth, up and through your legs. This continues to move through your hips, your abdomen, now your ribs, your chest, releasing all, your neck, and your face. Place your attention above your head and know that the earth, sky, and the wind hold you in love at all times. As you feel ready, wiggle fingers and toes. Open your eyes and come back to us in this room. I have what I hope will be a brief reading. This is from Ernest Holmes' Creative Ideas. There is one mind that governs everything, and I now affirm and accept that the same intelligence now governs my affairs. It is within me and around me at all times, directing, guiding, governing, controlling, and leading me happily to the fulfillment of all good purposes. It knows what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and I am compelled to act accordingly. I also salute the God presence in everyone I meet, and I know that as surely as I do this, the love indwelling them responds to the same presence within me. We act in the unison of peace and understanding, recognizing that all of life is the handiwork of God. I accept its love and harmony as now manifesting in every aspect of my experience. Definitely food for thought. Now we're going to stand once again for our fellowship song on page 13, God Goes With Me.
It's
please give a warm welcome to Julie Ross.
Thank you, that was very nice. The first song I want to play and sing for you today is a singing mantra that I came across on my healing journey. And it's called The Waters.
Every one of us benefits, and our community as a whole thrives because of your generosity. Thank you so much for your generous donations that support the work of the fellowship. Whether you're preparing your gift now or donate online, please hold your tithe or gift in consciousness and join me as we bless our offerings and affirm our abundance by reading together the blessing on the front of your bulletin. The light of divine love shines eternally, blessing and multiplying our tithes and offerings. I joyously give, knowing I always have enough to share in His spare care. Now let's take a special moment to join together in prayer, remembering those listed on the connection cards here in the basket and the others that you wish to remember. Mother, Father, Spirit, please surround all our beloved with peace, comfort, and beauty. We're going to do one more fellowship song, which is Thank You God, on page 39.
Thank you.
It is with great pleasure that I would like to welcome our wonderful speaker, Reverend Mary Sabai. Give her a big hand.
Hello, everyone. We had a steering committee meeting earlier this afternoon, and my mind has a tendency to get a little bit scattered during that time, so bringing it back. I am going to talk to you today about a few things, but they all stem from this wonderful little book called The Return of the Prodigal Son, written by Henry Nouwen. First of all, I want to ask how many of you are familiar with the parable, The Return of the Prodigal Son? Just raise your hand. Yes, I thought you would be. So I'm glad for that. I want to tell you a little bit first about Henry Nouwen. Henry was a Dutch priest, ordained by the Catholic Church in Amsterdam, and he lived from 1932 until 1996, passing also in Amsterdam. But he spent those 64 years in between, or at least a good share of them, traveling the world, speaking and teaching. He became one of the most popular and widely read spiritual authors of the Western world. He wrote 40 books and was one of the most sought after speakers as well. Interestingly, most frequently outside of the Catholic faith, Catholic institutions. So maybe that tells you something. He might be a little bit more in alignment with us. But he was a deeply, deeply passionate man. And this book and everything about it that he brings to our awareness in this book just really has touched me. And I wanted to share it with you. He was passionate about his spirituality first and foremost, and his desire to maintain his Catholic vows and his spirituality. And he was also passionate about life and social justice, about politics, about art, about music, so many things. And there are just a few little cute stories I want to share with you as well. Henry said that he knew that he wanted to be a priest when he was 5 years old, and he never deviated once in his life. And while his brothers and sisters were out playing ball and what other little kids do, Henry was setting up a chapel in the attic of their family home. And he performed Mass in his little chapel, and his brother attended with him. And then when he was ordained, he came to the United States to study psychology instead of being assigned a parish. The Catholic Church sent him for study. And when he was done, he was asked by Notre Dame to come and open their brand new psychology department. He was studying psychology. But it didn't take long for him to switch to the theology department, and that was where he felt most comfortable. But while he was here in the United States, he marched with Martin Luther King Jr. from Selma to Montgomery, and he walked behind his casket through Atlanta when he passed during his funeral. Very social justice minded, and he was very excited to be in the United States during this time when he could help to promote social justice in our country. He was asked to visit Yale Divinity School, and he said he went. He thought that was, thank you for the invitation. And when he got back, he was telling his friends, they kept asking me all these questions, and I answered the best I could, and then sometime later, they wrote and had offered him a position. They were literally interviewing him, and he had no idea. They didn't mention that. But he did. He came to Yale, and he taught there for 5 years. 3 years after he started, he was tenured, and 5 years fully professored. That's amazing. He was a very successful lecturer, filling his classes. And then he went to Harvard, and again, the same thing. People just flocked to his classes. People sat in the aisles and on the windowsills to hear him speak. But despite all of his success, the friends and colleagues that I read about and listened to said that he was also a man who was very fragile and sensitive and suffered greatly. He had a deep, deep need for love and affection that never seemed to be quite satisfied. It was like an empty cavern within. One of his friends said that she talked to his father at the age of 94, and he said, from the crib, Henry would yell out, "Do you love me?" over and over. And the father said, we would answer, yes, yes, of course we love you. And it was never quite enough to satisfy that need. It's almost as if, and I thought of this, and then I heard one of his colleagues talking about it, if we do believe in reincarnation, it's almost as if he came into this world with this desire to be a priest and to serve in that way. And he also brought with him this this deep need for love and affection. But this same friend said it seemed that his anguish fueled his genius, because he wrote about his feelings and his needs and wants and desires and from a spiritual perspective, and that allowed other people to have permission to take a look at their own and see how he was dealing with his. At one of the very lowest points in his life, he was sitting with a friend when he was 54, he went to Canada and was living in a community for disabled people. And he was sitting with a friend, and he noticed this poster behind the person. He said, I realized I wasn't paying attention to our conversation anymore, and I was just taken in by this picture. And he finally said, what is that poster? And she said, well, it's Rembrandt's Prodigal Son. And I have a picture here for you. Could you help me with that? Thank you. So we're talking about three things. We're talking about Henry Nouwen and his interpretations of this parable, a parable that is 2,000 years old, and a painting that is 353 years old, both of which, he says, just touched me to my core, just pulled me in. He loved Rembrandt also from Amsterdam, where he was born, a Dutch painter, and known as one of the most celebrated artists in our world, from until now. He was one of the most wonderful storytellers in his art. And Henry believed that that's what touched him. He said, I saw something that I needed to see in this picture. On the back, you'll see Rembrandt's portrait as well, and you'll also see why he's only referred to as Rembrandt. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. But I actually, before I got up here, I asked Henry, and I asked Rembrandt, and I asked Jesus, help me with this. He became fascinated with Rembrandt and this painting. And he, in his book, talks about the really tumultuous and tortured life that Rembrandt lived. He was one of the most popular and sought-after artists of his time while he was alive, which is also unusual. But by the end of his life, he had lost everything. He had lost 4 of his 5 children, 2 wives, and a partner that he lived with. He had no money, and he had lost all, the loves of his life. And Henry thought how beautiful that he painted from that place of emptiness. It was as if he was emptied out so that he could be filled with the love of God. And Henry saw the love of God in this picture. He said, I can't totally explain what came over me when I saw it, but I knew I wanted to be there. And what he was referring to was that he wanted to be in the embrace of the Father. This deep, loving, accepting, unlimited, unconditional love. In a few years after he bought the poster himself. He was just mesmerized by it from then on. And eventually some friends asked if he would want to travel to St. Petersburg by chance. And that's where this Rembrandt painting is located, in a museum there. So he was ecstatic that he was going to be able to see the real painting in person. And think about it, this painting is 8 feet by 7 feet. That's how big that is. And I'm thinking this might be an 8-foot door. It's huge. And he was able to go in. He sat one day for hours, 4 or 5 hours, just sitting and looking at this painting, studying it. He came back the next day and did the same thing. But more interesting too is the fact that one of his friends talks about the fact that she had gone with him to an art museum. This was prior to the St. Petersburg experience. And he found a picture painting that he was interested in. He sat down and he just studied it. And she sat down next to him, and 10 minutes went by, and 20 minutes went by, and she was getting really impatient, and she finally turned to him and said, "What are you doing? Like, I don't understand what you're doing." And he said, "Well, are you in the painting? Have you stepped into the painting?" And she said, "Well, no, I'm just looking at it, looking at the surface of it." What a wonderful just concept for studying this painting, stepping into it. And that's what he did with the return of the prodigal son. He stepped into it, and he took on and identified with the different characters in that painting. At first it was with the returning son. And as I said before, he wanted to be in that embrace. That was the most important thing to him. And we know from the parable that this son had asked the father for his inheritance early and then taken off. He took off to other parts of the world and squandered it, and eventually was feeding pigs and eating worse than the pigs were. And the parable tells us that he finally came to his senses and thought, the servants of my father are probably eating better than I am. I could go home and ask if I could serve my father as a servant. So he went back home, and he had this speech prepared. But the father didn't want to hear the speeches. You know the story. He welcomed him with open arms, put the ring on his finger, the robe around him, the sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf so that we can celebrate the return of my son. So then Henry would talk to his friends a lot about the painting, and he would talk about the fact that he felt like I was identifying with that younger son. And one of them said, "But Henry, I think you're the older son." And so he began to contemplate that idea. And he said, well, of course. He said, I was the oldest son in my family, and I had done it all right. I had done everything right. I had gone to school, just like the son in the parable. He'd stayed on the farm. He'd worked for his father. And, he was never offered these gifts that his father's offering this son who runs off and squanders the money. So he's standing there filled with anger, filled with resentment in the picture. And Henry felt like he had perhaps been doing all the right things, saying all the right things, but was perhaps not as close to his father and living and experiencing a loving father the way that he could have been. He said, I discovered that I had been created, shaped, and guided and formed and loved my whole life from this picture, from this painting. It was a giant step for Henry, and he said the challenge was to be able to stay there and say yes to that love on a more consistent basis. He said sometimes it felt easier to stay in the question, do you love me, than to begin to really step into the truth and say, I am the beloved Son of God, as I am with all the shadows and all the light, unconditionally loved. Sometimes that's harder to believe, and it's easier to just stay in that, do you love me, do you love me? Henry was talking to another friend and talking about, yes, I was the returned son. Yes, I am also the older son. And the friend said, but Henry, now you need to be the father. So stop wallowing around in this, I need to be loved, and I've not really done it right all my life, and take on the father. Henry said the father was not the kind of father or parent who says, don't go to the young son. The young son took his inheritance and took off. But the father gave it to him and said, I am with you. So he was saying, I am with you when you come back, but I was also here and you're leaving. I was also with you and you're leaving. And in reality, Henry said, we all are constantly leaving and returning, leaving and returning. The father blesses the son when he gets home, but he blessed him when he left as well. And he didn't want to hear the son's speech. He just runs out and throws his arm around him. So how does the father deal with the older son? The older son didn't want to come into the celebration. He was resentful and angry, so he stayed outside. And the father went after him and said, I want you to come in and be at my table. I want us to be united as a family, for you to receive my love, for you to stand up in my love and claim it. Your brother was lost, and now he's found. It's only right we should celebrate. So sometimes I think, when I think back in my own life, about leaving home, and you all know that story now at 17. I knew that I better exhaust every last possibility before I decided to ask to come home. And I never had to do that. But I definitely would have felt guilty. And I definitely would have felt like I was crawling back home defeated and expecting to be judged. But the father that Henry met from this painting was not looking at fault, but rejoicing and being happy that he had returned. So Henry's message is that our Father, and what I want to ask you to is just get over the gender things and the father, mother. He also made note that, and if you look close enough, the Father's hands, at the Father's hands, one of them is very delicate, and Henry calls that the hand of the mother, and the other the hand of the Father. So the Father asks us to accept love, to stand up. It may not be easy, but you are loved and safe. I affirm you, all that you are, your gifts, your beauty, and all your shadows. Say yes, claim it. You have the right to walk in this world. And my duty and mission is to give this love to others now. Henry took on that mission. That was his message from the time he discovered this, from the painting and writing his book. His message became wherever he traveled, we are the beloved children of God. The other thing that was interesting to me is that Rembrandt didn't paint the scene exactly as the parable was written, but he painted it from his heart, from his experience. And we all can look at this painting and step into those characters in different ways, because our experiences and our consciousness is different than everyone else's. So I want to invite you to, take some time, maybe this next week, and step inside this picture, this painting. Think of yourself in that museum in St. Petersburg, sitting on the velvet-covered bench, looking at this humongous painting that probably took Rembrandt 2 years of his life to finish. And explore the relationships, earthly and spiritually. Our task is to accept and to claim the love and to choose the truth. I am more than enough. I am love itself. And I have a quote I want to leave you with. When 4 years ago I went to St. Petersburg to see Rembrandt's The Return of the Prodigal Son, I had little idea how much I would have to live what I then saw. I stand with awe at the place where Rembrandt brought me. He led me from the kneeling, disheveled young son to the standing, bent-over old father, from the place of being blessed to the place of blessing. As I look at my aging hands, I know that they have been given to me to stretch out toward all who suffer, to rest upon the shoulders of all who come, and to offer the blessing that emerges from the immensity of God's love. And now he says to everyone, welcome home. It's so good to have you here. Isn't that lovely? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Beautiful, wonderful, meaningful as always. Thank you so much. Page 35, our thoughts, our prayers.
Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers, take charge of what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, the state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes a prayer. Check 1, 2.
This next song is one I'm sure you'll all be familiar with. Harkening back to, let's say late 60s, early 70s. It's a good one. Rest is still is an issue. You who on the road must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, and fathers them wisdom to go by, and feed them on your dreams. The one they kiss, the one you know by.
Wednesday, the 19th at 6:30 in the Fellowship for Today office is a sound bath by Julie Ross. And having experienced it is fabulous, really wonderful. On Saturday, October 29th is a mediumship 101 workshop, individual and group session from 1 to 3, correct?
10 to 1.
10 to 1, and then individual sessions afterwards. And this is in the announcements as well as on Facebook. And then October 30th is the famous Fellowship for Today potluck, so come prepared to eat with some incredible food by all of us who bring the food, which is great. I wanted to thank everybody for a wonderful service today. Special thank you out to Mary, who comes up with the most amazing services that just really touch the heart each and every time, something different all the time. Samantha, I had the experience to watch everything that she had to do today, and it's like, check, 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 like a sound in the studio. Corey, thank you. Everything that you do is really appreciated and absolutely wonderful and heartfelt. Julie Ross, thank you so much. Very, very, very much. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today in person, and if you're at home under your heated blanket, welcome you to join us for our peace circle, followed by the closing blessing.